All right, guys, we're here. We're going to jump into what the first step is if you want to turn your house or condo, apartment, townhome, whatever you've got into a short-term rental. So let's jump into those first steps that you're going to take. So first things first, kind of need to know, are you going to be moving out of the home, or are you going to be converting your house where a portion of it is going to be a short-term rental and you're still going to live in it? So let's cover the converting it, because that's actually how I started in this business all the way back in 2013. We had a basement house. Just wanted somebody else to pay my mortgage. And that's actually what happened for about 3 years, where we just rented our basement out. This was way back when, before Airbnb ever became a thing. Nobody even knew about it. They weren't advertising. It was the golden age. But anyway, if you're going to do that, there's a few things you need to consider. Number one is, how is that space going to be utilized for your guest, right? So do they have a separate space or entry to get into the basement? Or maybe it's a mother-in-law suite in your backyard. You've got a little guest house or something that's separate. You just want to think about how they're going to access it, where they're going to park. Do they have a separate door entry? Are they going to bother you? Are you going to bother them while they occupy whatever space you're going to be providing them? Another thing to consider is the living space itself. You need to have usually more than a bedroom, unless you plan on sharing your living space and kitchen with that guest, right? So do they have a bedroom, ideally their own living space, like living room area, and do they have any kind of kitchen? If you can't give them a full kitchen, at least give them a partial kitchen. Usually if you just have some countertop space with a mini fridge and a microwave, that can usually handle most any issues that come up with people that wanting to just basic supplies just to kind of spend the night for 1, 2, or 3 nights. But if you are going to get longer term tenants, that are going to be there for, let's say, 1 month or longer, or even a couple of weeks for that matter, you do want to have a better setup for cooking, especially if that's something that's going to be important to those guests. So just consider that, unless you want to plan on sharing your kitchen. That's just totally your call as a homeowner, and how you're going to do that. So just think about that. The other thing to consider is the noise and the privacy side of things on both sides, right? Are they going to bother you, or are you going to bother them with, sharing walls, or, coming and going all the time? What's the privacy setup like, for them? Just put yourself in their shoes. It's probably the best way to think about what that guest is going to want and expect when they come and stay. Would you want to stay there as well? Do you have everything you need? Do you have a laundry room there, or do you have laundry access on the property? If they're going to be staying longer term, like I said, anybody that's staying more than 4 or 5 days usually wants to have laundry in place. So just some considerations. But I would say the access and the setup is probably the two most important things to consider if you're going to share your space. For those of you who are going to convert your house or property or whatever you're living in there to a full short-term rental, and you're moving out to convert it into an investment property, you can kind of forget about everything I just said. But at the same time, there are some considerations and crossover of what I just said. So first things first, if you're going to move out of the property, you're going to think about setting up ideally a camera on the outside of the property, at least to see who's coming and going. If you're going to be, hosting groups, it's nice to know who's in your property and how many people they showed up with, right? Did they show up with the 4 people that they said in their listing when they booked it, or did they show up with 16 people and they're going to throw a party? So I cannot emphasize enough just to put a camera, at least either on the door or on the front porch or whatever, on the garage, just to see who's coming and going and monitor that. And then the next thing is just having a proper door lock. Obviously, you'd probably do this if you share your space as well, like a basement type house set up with a keyed entry. But if you're sharing the space, you're living there, it's probably not as big of a deal to have a remote lock that you can control via Wi-Fi access. But if you're going to rent the whole house out, for sure, you're going to need this. Don't be one of these, short-term rental owners that basically puts a keyed lock on their property, even with a couple backup keys. You're just waiting for a disaster to happen, because eventually that key and the backup key will get lost, especially if you're going to be out of town or live far away from the property. And sometimes your cleaner is not going to be available to run that key over. Or that spare key anyway. So just think about that. Those are 2 main things to do. And then of course, just converting your space. The biggest mistake that I see people make in this business is they don't want to spend money. They just want to throw their property to the market and put it out there for short-term rental. And this is a great way to get it out super quickly and get very, very little in annual revenue, right? Very little occupancy, very low nightly rates. If you want to crush it in this business, learn how to treat the property like a business, make the property awesome. And what I mean by awesome is think about either going, unique, going very like cozy and charming, go very luxury, or even, having a lot of character, right? Like it could be a very trendy, or, you could have murals all over the house. You could have very unique type furniture. You could have just whatever, like whatever your space is that you're currently living in doesn't necessarily mean it's going to appeal to the future guest, right? So you want to do things that are hopefully going to appeal to the masses. And if they don't appeal to the masses, that's okay too. But if you're going to niche down, make sure that there's a viable niche for it and that it's really going to speak to that audience in the best way possible. So we usually try to just go super unique with our places as much as we can, and then offering enough amenities, right? So as you're going through the process of turning your house into a short-term rental, the first things first when you're going to rent the whole property out is, how am I going to make this property awesome? How am I going to stand out in front of everybody else, right? You're going to do that through design and furniture and the photos that you take and the amenities that you offer and all these kind of things. It's not rocket science, but I can tell you that 80% of the market gets it wrong. And this is why we do very well on our properties, because we have honed in on what matters the most to people, what makes them attracted to your listing, what makes them end up booking it, and then what gives them that 5-star experience. So when you're going through the process of figuring out how to convert your property, these are the things to consider. And I would encourage you, just go online, check out your competition. You're going to need to do it anyway to understand the pricing and, how many of the properties are similar to yours. What do they offer? How can yours be better? Like, all these things matter a lot. You want to understand the market you're in. What's the average occupancy, the nightly rate and all that, and then get really good on marketing. If you want to be successful, learning how to market your property, even outside of just having it on Airbnb or VRBO or whatever, is going to pay dividends. If you can do direct bookings, or you can, be on other platforms like booking.com or anything else that's out there. So just keep that stuff in mind. And again, having launched it eventually, make sure you wow those first few groups of people that come through the door and give them 5-star reviews on both sides. And then, rinse and repeat, make it awesome. But anyway, those are the first few steps that you really want to do, is really put a lot of thought into the design of the space, make sure that your setup makes sense for people, and understand your demographic. I didn't really talk about that, but understanding your demographic is, are they going to be a family that's staying there? Is it going to be, young people, like young couples in their 20s or something, that are going to float through town? Like, let's say it's a condo in Uptown versus a 4-bedroom single family house in the middle of a suburban neighborhood. When you understand your demographic, what age are they? What are they into? Why are they coming in town? Then you can design your place around the demographic itself. Like, are they coming in town with kids because there's some amusement park close by? Are they coming in town for a convention or for weddings or whatever? The way you create that space is going to be different than if you're appealing to an older market or a younger market, smaller groups versus big groups, right? So just think about these things, because that stuff does really matter, and it's going to help make your place stand out. And as your place stands out, people book it. And as they book it, your income goes up. And just that little bit of tweak, you might get an extra 5 or 10% occupancy per year, which could translate to $5,000 to $20,000 a year in additional revenue. So I hope this video helped you guys. Again, first steps to turning your house into an STR. Let me know what questions you guys have or any comments that you have. We will be putting out more content like this all the time, so please do subscribe. We have a one-stop shop, not only for management, but also for B&B Wealth Academy, on teaching others how to do what we do and how to scale and get into that top 10%. And of course, we even have a cool short-term rental calculator completely free on our website that you guys can check out too, to analyze your next deal, or just to cross-check your current property and see if it's going to perform the way you want to. It creates a pro forma for you as well for your lender. It's super cool. So anyway, hope you guys check out the next video. Leave me a comment, and I will see you guys on the next video.